Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
The triple-demic is taking a toll. Good evening, I'm Maya Trabulsi. COVID-19 related hospitalizations are continuing to steadily increase in San Diego, and flu admissions are on the rise too. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says at least one local hospital system is running out of room for patients.
We have more patients needing hospital beds than we have beds.
At UC San Diego Health, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Chris Longhurst says they're making new patient care units in non-traditional spaces, like inside of conference rooms.
It's interesting that we never hit this point during the COVID pandemic the last couple of years, even though we had large surges of respiratory patients. Now it seems to be the combination of delayed care along with the tridemic or triple-demic of COVID, the flu, and other respiratory viruses like RSV.
Longhurst says despite being stretched, they're managing, and they've set up overflow tents. County-wide, COVID hospitalizations are slightly up since Friday. They now stand at 376 people, according to data from the state. That's a little higher than this time last year and has been slowly increasing.
To me, it's really no surprise because we knew that once people get together for Thanksgiving, we're going to see an increased cases in 2 weeks. We're going to see increased death about 1 to 2 weeks after that.
Kaiser San Diego's Assistant Chief Medical Officer, Dr. William Sang, says they too are seeing upticks in both COVID and flu hospitalizations, but not to the extent that UCSD Health is.
Right now, we're on the upslope. And again, what we're hoping is that if people get vaccinated, we can make that mountain to a little hill.
Last winter, San Diego COVID hospitalizations peaked at around 1,300 people.
We are nowhere near the number of cases and admissions as we were in last year. But again, this is still very early. We still haven't hit Christmas yet. We still haven't hit New Year yet.
To reduce your risk of being hospitalized for the flu and COVID, Sang is encouraging people to stay up to date on both vaccinations. He says this holiday season, people need to protect themselves and others.
We know what to do. You know what to do. I think you've got enough information. Try to stay outdoors, protect your environment, know where you are. Mask up if you have high risk.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
For the first time in almost a year, inflation cooled considerably and more than expected last month. But what does it mean for your wallet? Ivan Rodriguez breaks down the numbers and whether we will actually feel any economic relief.
After feeling the squeeze of rising costs for months, a new federal report shows inflation is cooling, and President Joe Biden says it's a promising sign for Americans.
This new report is the 5th month in a row where annual inflation has fallen in the United States.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, prices rose 7.1% annually in November. That's down from 7.7% in October. Month to month, prices rose by 0.1% last month compared to October's 0.4%.
Make no mistake, prices are still too high. We have a lot more work to do, but things are getting better.
But what does this actually mean for Americans? Economist Joe Brusuela says lower prices for those essential everyday items like food and gas.
And as we move forward in the next year, prices are going to move back towards what can be better be described as generally stable.
Meanwhile, United Airlines is feeling confident about the economy, announcing a massive purchase for at least 200 Boeing planes.
This is a really big step for United.
In terms of a recession impacting the travel industry, United CEO Scott Kirby says he doesn't see one coming.
We just don't see it in our data. In fact, every month we set new records.
This week, the Federal Reserve is expecting to raise interest rates again, aiming to cool down the economy and bring down inflation, all while avoiding triggering a recession. And economists say the Fed could begin loosening its policy next year as more data points to lower inflation.
The November inflation report provided an early holiday gift for all Americans.
Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
Here in San Diego County, gas is the cheapest it's been in over a year. The average price dropped 2 cents today to $4.56 a gallon, and it's fallen by $1.86 since reaching a new record high back in October. AAA says the seasonal pattern of driving less due to shorter days and crummy weather, combined with a lower oil cost, is driving gas prices lower. And filling up your tank may cost less now, but brace yourself for your natural gas bill. San Diego gas and electric prices are expected to be sharply higher this month and likely even higher in January. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson explains why.
SDG&E gas bills are getting a lot heftier in December and January, and the increases will be steeper than the ones that roiled customers last winter.
We learned a lot from last year when our customers were frustrated and upset with the uptick in cost of electricity and the uptick in cost of gas.
The utility was under fire from customers who didn't expect the massive increases. Officials hope talking about it now eases the sticker shock when December and January bills come due.
More usage coupled with a really expensive commodity price are converging together to provide that uncertainty.
SDG&E's Anthony Wagner says the utility did ask for a rate increase in the fall. That'll take effect in January. And the actual cost of natural gas is climbing because of the war in Ukraine and other factors.
Our storage is lower because it's winter and people are using more. And of course, people are using more, which causes a fluctuation in the market to have the cost spike because everybody's using it. Not just Southern California, but we're in competition regionally with all these other states that are purchasing gas on the open market as well.
60% of the utility's customers have natural gas hookups, and their average gas bill will be close to $80 in December. The utility expects that to jump another 19% or so in January. The cost of electricity could also go up because the region relies on natural gas-powered power plants. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
A historic breakthrough for clean energy. For the first time, a lab in Northern California conducted a nuclear fusion event that produced a net gain of energy. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge explains what this means.
Using nuclear fusion as a source of energy has been studied and anticipated for at least 60 years. But last week, Lawrence Livermore fired 192 lasers at a tiny pellet of fuel, creating nuclear fusion and producing more energy than was invested. They called it ignition.
Ignition is a first step, a truly monumental one, that sets the stage for a transformational decade in high-energy density science and fusion research, and I cannot wait to see where it takes us.
Fusion takes place when two hydrogen nuclei collide, prompted by very high heat. They fuse and give off energy. It's the same energy produced by our sun. For decades, scientists have gone through the motions of fusing atoms in a lab.
But last week, for the first time, they designed this experiment so that the fusion fuel stayed hot enough, dense enough, and round enough for long enough that it ignited, and it produced more energies than the lasers had deposited.
Not all fusion is done using lasers. George Tynan, a professor of engineering science at UC San Diego, is researching fusion that uses strong magnetic fields. He says using fusion to produce energy for our homes will require a lot more science and engineering. And he says he's uncomfortable calling fusion the holy grail of clean, abundant energy.
I see this as a technology that can play in concert with renewable energy, with electrification of the transportation system, electrification of many other parts of the economy.
Above all, he says we need to prove that fusion makes sense, both scientifically and economically.
Fusion has to then win a place in the marketplace. It's going to be competing with other forms of clean, firm generation. And it will have to be developed as a cost-effective technology. And, you know, that requires building multiple demonstration and test reactors.
Tynan says fusion does produce some radioactive waste, but it has a short half-life, comparable to radioactive waste produced by hospitals. Will we see fusion energy production in our lifetimes? The Biden administration wants to see a fusion demonstration plant within 10 years. Tynan calls that possible, but difficult. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
The Respect for Marriage Act is now the law of the land. It protects same-sex and interracial marriages from any potential reversal action by the U.S. Supreme Court. Today, President Biden signed the law to codify marriage equality. It voids a 1996 law which defined marriage as only between a man and a woman. States are also now required to honor the validity of all out-of-state marriage licenses issued to gay and mixed-race couples. Local advocates are praising the protection brought by the legislation to stop any future legal interference.
This is a work that we have done here in our community, person to person, family to family, heart to heart. So this is a moment to enjoy the victory, but also knowing that we are ready for the next battle.
The Respect for Marriage Act passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. San Diego County Board of Supervisors Chairman Nathan Fletcher is wrapping up his time as chair. Now he's looking to someone else to take the lead. Today, Fletcher publicly endorsed Vice Chairwoman Nora Vargas to succeed him in the new year. Vargas is the first Latina to serve as county supervisor. Fletcher will remain on the board, although he is considering a run for state senate. Drug overdoses can happen anywhere, and now activists are turning a spotlight onto the night scene. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne tells us they're reaching out to bars and nightclubs to try to save lives.
San Diego is a beer town, and it takes a lot of water to brew beer.
1 gallon of beer, you're going to need 5 gallons of water.
Despite this week's rain, we're still in a drought. So it makes perfect sense that the East Village Brewing Company would partner with the San Diego International Airport to brew beer from condensate water. That's water produced by the air conditioning units at the airport's jet bridges.
And we do apologize. It looks like we may have experienced some technical error with that story. We'll try and bring you the right story coming up. The Supreme Court declined to hear a challenge to California's law banning the sale of flavored cigarettes. Lawyers for tobacco company R.J. Reynolds argued that the new law conflicts with the Tobacco Control Act, which gives the FDA the authority to regulate the sale of cigarettes. California argued that the justices should stay out of the dispute and let the state guard the health of its citizens. The new law is set to go into effect on December 21st. By the year 2025, all California 4-year-olds will be guaranteed a free spot in a new grade called Transitional Kindergarten. It's meant to better prepare children for kindergarten and reduce daycare costs for parents. But KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregesser says it has introduced a lot of unintended consequences.
All 4-year-olds will get high quality instructional education by creating that new grade.
Last year, Governor Gavin Newsom trumpeted a multi-billion-dollar plan to transform early childhood learning. It would bring 4-year-olds into the public school system in Transitional Kindergarten, or TK. But just a year into the rollout, Newsom's plan is causing big problems in the childcare industry. Here's why. 4-year-olds cost the least because they require the fewest childcare staff. So historically, providers made money on 4-year-olds, but lost money on infants. But TK has upended that balance and put some childcares out of business. Experts say these impacts could have been alleviated if state leaders had talked to childcare providers first. Instead,
there's the really positive ends of the expansion.
Alethea Argulas is the executive director of First 5 San Diego. That's a nonprofit advocating for children under age 5.
But I think just really honoring what those potential impacts are in our community, or the real impacts in the community.
She asked for water. Impacts on childcare providers like Murin Algori. These days, her phone is constantly ringing, but all the calls are from parents asking for infant care.
I want to say 90
to 95% of them are for infants and toddlers.
But Al Gore doesn't take infants. If she did, she'd only be able to take 4 at a time. That's because of state licensing requirements.
If my ratio for infants is 4, and I'm not getting phone calls for children 2 and up, it means that I'm going to have to decrease to caring for only 4 children.
She'd have to let go of her assistant and charge far more per infant to stay profitable. A new San Diego County YMCA survey found that more than 3/4 of childcare businesses have lost children to a TK program. Many respondents said their business was suffering as a result. And providers aren't just losing kids, they're losing staff. That's because in the next 3 years, San Diego public schools will need 4 times as many TK teachers. And Arguelles says many of those teachers will be recruited from childcare centers.
They're already having a challenge in retaining or recruiting and retaining qualified staff. And now when we see potentially more seasoned, trained staff, head teachers, center directors that are saying, this might be a viable career path for me to go into this, the TK through 12 system.
TK teachers working at public schools get better pay, better hours, and more vacation time than childcare workers. That's appealing to people like Kimberly Watkinson.
From TK teachers and kindergarten teachers, obviously it's not like the pay of a doctor or an engineer, right? But it's significantly better than a preschool teacher.
She'll graduate from SDSU with an early childhood education degree next year. In the past, many like Watkinson went on to work at preschools or childcare centers. But that's rarely the case now. So says Sasha Longstreth. She's the chair of SDSU's Child and Family Development Department.
They can focus on experiential learning. They can focus on developing children's social and emotional skills. And once children get into kindergarten, first grade, where it's primarily math and literacy, and these other activities take a back seat.
In part 2 of this series, we'll look at whether TK classes and other elementary school systems are being designed for the attention spans and emotional needs of 4-year-olds. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, scientists achieve a breakthrough in nuclear fusion, raising hopes for clean energy technology. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
It's mission accomplished for the U.S. Navy and its partnership with NASA off the coast of Baja. San Diego-based sailors from the USS Portland were part of the mission to retrieve the unmanned Orion space capsule. It's part of the larger Artemis project that will return humans to the moon. One of the Navy divers who participated says it was an opportunity that rarely comes along.
Never thought this would happen, and I'm just excited to be a part of it. The only thing going through my mind was like, hey, this thing just came from outer space, and we're the first people to touch it.
And that sailor went through a year of training for this particular job. Next stop for the Orion capsule is Florida, where NASA will continue its research.
Well, we have some cool air in place. Some of you had frosty weather this past morning, and we're going to do it again tonight in some of these inland areas. Some of the colder spots, as we're going to soon show you, will have a true freeze. But we're going to have another cool day, even through Wednesday and into Thursday. We're kind of locked into a cool pattern. We will gain a couple of degrees if we were to compare Tuesday's highs with Wednesday's highs, but still temperatures hedging below average. Even this weekend, only a few degrees warmer, but we're still going to be on the cool side of normal. Overnight tonight, we're going to get down to 28 in Ramona and all the way down to 23 in Mount Laguna, Campo 26. Borrego Springs flirting with freezing, but again, even into Escondido, you could have some patchy frost out there, even if the forecast and observed official temperature, which is up about 6 feet up, is 35 degrees. There could be a difference between that and the actual grass or the ground level. Future radar is going to show that we're going to stay dry here across Southern California through Wednesday. Kind of a sleeper here. Not many widespread clouds. A little batch of snow into parts of the central Rockies into Colorado. But we stay cold in the interior and still chilly for the coast. And as we look at the highs, we're going to gain just a couple of subtle degrees compared to where we were earlier this week. But it's not much of a change. We do stay certainly cooler than average. 61 Oceanside down to San Diego, Chula Vista 62, El Cajon 65 degrees. And if you're going on a hike there, Mount Laguna, bundle up. 47 is all we do during the warmest part of the afternoon. Thursday, the map doesn't change a whole lot. We still have some chilly air in place in a subtle way, just a smidge warmer for the coast. But late this week, the cold air remains entrenched across most of the nation here, including the bulk of the west. So temperatures hedging up to 62 for the coast by Thursday, and then we chill back down. Just maybe a brief sprinkle or shower into Sunday. Saturday's our warmest day for the inland areas. We jump to 67, but that's about it. In the mountains, staying in the 40s, 48 Friday, Saturday, back down to 44 with a brief shower possible Sunday. And then into the deserts, temperatures hovering in the 60s. Nothing like those triple-digit temps that we deal with in the summer. That's a distant memory at this point. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
And now we'd like to get back to that story about preventing drug overdoses. Here's KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne.
Fentanyl at Night. That is the name of a free webinar aimed at informing nightlife business owners, event producers, and community leaders about stopping overdoses in the night scene.
It's going to be talking about like how fentanyl is going to affect people in that environment and what we can do about it and be proactive.
Nathan Smitty, who also goes by Narcan Nate, will be one of the webinar speakers. He distributes Narcan kits and fentanyl test strips to the community. He says drugs in the night scene are more common than people think, and being prepared could save someone's life.
Like, people don't want to admit this, but if you have a restaurant, if you have a bar, if you have a club, it's, you know, people are going to use drugs at your establishment. Like, it could be your employees, it could be your patrons, but they're going to use drugs, and sometimes these drugs have fentanyl in it, and the consumer doesn't know it. A lot of times the dealer doesn't know it, you know, and so we're talking about how we can be proactive.
Smitty has been working to get overdose reversal and prevention kits in any establishments interested in them.
Would you rather have naloxone on hand and save somebody's life or not, and then your bar, your restaurant gets shut down, you have a crime scene, you know, and an investigation, and then someone just lost their life?
Brittany Leach is a marketing director in Hillcrest and has worked in the nightclub scene for over a decade.
Just like any bar and club in any decade, drugs have always been present. But this fentanyl crisis that has just kind of come around the corner, at least that's how it feels, is a lot more severe and harsh and fast than anything I've ever seen within our community before.
Leach says many business owners she works with are conscious of the drug overdose problems and have taken the time to train their staff on overdose reversals.
You don't have to be a druggie for this to affect you. This is everywhere right now. And so I know that a lot of our community has taken the time to go to trainings on what to do with overdoses. We're trying to put Narcan in as many of our facilities as we can and train the staff and make sure that they understand how to use that.
The Fentanyl at Night webinar is open to all and will take place Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
So what's better than an ice-cold beer inside a perfectly air-conditioned room on a hot San Diego day? Well, how about beer made from water condensation from those AC units? KPBS's Alexander Nguyen gives us a taste of an unusual partnership between the San Diego International Airport and a local brewery.
San Diego is a beer town, and it takes a lot of water to brew beer.
1 gallon of beer, you're going to need 5 gallons of water.
Despite this week's rain, we're still in a drought. So it makes perfect sense that the East Village Brewing Company would partner with the San Diego International Airport to brew beer from condensate water. That's water produced by the air conditioning units at the airport's jet bridges.
There's 100,000 gallons of water.
Gil Cabrera, chair of the Port Authority, has a conundrum. What to do with all that water? The Port Authority is all about sustainability.
And some staff member that really should get a very big prize thought, why don't we make beer from it? And this idea was born to transport some of that water to a local brewer and put some beer and make some beer together.
Turns out the water from those AC units is perfect for making beer.
This is some of the best brewing water that you can possibly get.
Aaron Justice is the chief brewer and owner of East Village Brewing Company. He says condensate water is even cleaner than tap water.
Condensate on its own is pretty clean. It's almost similar to rainwater, which is pretty clean. But beyond that, it was reverse osmosis, so ultra-filtered water, and we use ozone as well.
Well, it's great that this beer is being brewed from reclaimed water, but this is San Diego and it's a beer town. So what's important is, how does it taste?
When you taste the beers, you can taste how crisp and clean it is. It's perfect for Pilsner, which traditionally has very soft water that has low minerality. And the IPA is also very dry because of how low mineral content, the low salinity of that water. And it really allows the hops to pop and shine.
This will be an ongoing partnership between the airport and East Village Brewing. For the inaugural first batch, the brewery released 2 beers, Hoppy Travels IPA and Pre-Flight Pils. Both are now available at the East Village Brewing Company and within the next few weeks at Terminal 2. Cheers! Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Tomorrow marks 10 years since the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. NPR's Morning Edition has coverage of the remembrance in Connecticut. And KPBS Midday Edition will have a conversation with LA Times columnist Jean Guerrero on the changing politics for Latinos in Imperial County. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.